What sets apart the person who succeeds from the one who hesitates? It's not about being super smart or rich or even perfectly prepared. It's about initiative, the willingness to act even before you feel ready. The world doesn't reward those who wait for permission. It rewards those who grab the moment while everyone else is still looking for signs. Yet, most people spend their best years waiting. They wait for more knowledge, more security, more confidence, more encouragement, more certainty. But they don't get that these things don't come before you act. They come after. Confidence isn't something you need to start. It's something you get by doing. You don't feel ready before you begin. You begin, and then you grow into readiness. This is a basic rule of life. All power belongs to the person who dares to move while others are stuck. You see, the average person mistakenly thinks that success starts when everything is perfect. But that person will die with their dreams still inside them, never fulfilled. The winners, those who build, rise, and make a difference, don't wait for perfect conditions. They create conditions by taking imperfect action. They know that simply stepping forward kicks off the very forces they need to keep going. They don't hope for clarity. They create it by moving. When you act, you quiet the noise in your head. When you move, you push past fear. When you start, you change who you are. The only reason most people never become who they were meant to be is that they're unwilling to move until their emotions tell them it's okay. But emotions are not always reliable. They follow your habits, your fears, your comfort zones. If you always obey your feelings, you'll be stuck in hesitation. But if you lead with decision, discipline, and intentional action, your feelings will start to match the person you're becoming. That's why I say winners act before they feel ready. They move because they're driven by their purpose, not by comfort. Purpose is your true guide. Purpose will carry you through fear, through resistance, through delays. Purpose will speak louder than your doubts and lead you to decisions your old self would never have dared to make. But make no mistake, every decision that moves you closer to your destiny will come wrapped in fear. The difference isn't the absence of fear, it's how you respond to it. Most people shrink back, winners rise. Most hesitate, winners lean in. Most overthink, winners do it. There comes a moment for everyone where your life splits into two paths. The life you would have had if you waited, and the life you stepped into because you moved. I don't care if you're unsure. I don't care if the path is dark. I don't care if you're missing resources. What matters is that you have a reason. What matters is that something inside you is calling for more. That is the seed, and the seed must be planted not in comfort, but in courage. Stop waiting for ready. Let's be clear. The reason you keep delaying isn't because you're not capable. It's because you're addicted to the idea of being ready. You think that if you just prepare enough, gather a little more insight, a little more time, a little more reassurance, then you'll be ready. But that day never comes. Here's the truth. The person who waits to be certain will always be outpaced by the person who acts and learns. That's the winner's advantage. They gather feedback, not fantasies. They move, adjust, try again, and improve. They don't sit still trying to guess the perfect moment. They trust that the moment they choose is the perfect one because they made it so. There's a false idea that has robbed millions of their destiny. The idea of the perfect plan. But no plan survives contact with the real world. Winners don't rely on perfect plans. They rely on powerful momentum. They know you can adjust something that's moving, but you can't steer something that's standing still. You must be willing to learn through challenges, to grow by doing, to push yourself through difficulties. And that only happens when you tackle a mission before you feel you're worthy of it. I've met brilliant people with great ideas who did nothing. I've met people with half their talent who did everything. The difference was never their ability. It was their commitment to action. They had one quality the others lacked. They moved. They didn't wait for applause or an invitation or the illusion of safety. They simply acted. And that action created results, relationships, income, and resilience. You must deeply understand this. What you build by moving becomes the foundation for who you become in the future. Embrace failure. Conquer regret. Now I know what you're thinking. What if I fail? You will, and that's good. Failure is like a forge. It refines your thinking, your skills, and your standards. It gets rid of what doesn't work and shows you what does. It humbles your pride and strengthens your character. But you'll never experience that if you stay a theorist. Theorists don't change the world. Builders do, and builders act. You must become okay with embarrassment. You must stop being afraid of not getting it right the first time. You must replace your fear of failure with a fear of regret. Because regret, my friend, is the most expensive thing a person can carry. It haunts you in quiet moments, whispering, "You could have if only you had acted." But you don't have to live that way. You can choose to be the person who says, "I may not have had all the answers, but I acted. I trusted the voice within me more than the noise around me." Do you know what happens when you act before you feel ready? You become trustworthy in the eyes of your future self. You prove that you're no longer a slave to delay. You prove that you can be counted on even when there's no spotlight. That kind of person doesn't need to be reminded or begged. They are self-starters, and that's the beginning of mastery. The world needs more people like this. People who move before the applause, who start when it's still quiet, who build not because they have everything figured out, but because they're determined to figure it out along the way. These are the people who rise to the top, not by chance or luck, but by the sheer force of decision. And you can be one of them, if you dare to let go of the false comfort of being ready. You're not supposed to feel ready. You're supposed to be available to grow, available to lead, available to move. And movement is what starts the miracle. When you begin, resources start to appear. When you decide, things start to fall into place. When you commit, the path opens up, not all at once, but one step at a time. That's how greatness is built, step by step, not in a flash of inspiration, but in 1,000 quiet decisions that say, "I will go anyway. I will speak, build, begin, lead, even if my voice shakes and my hands tremble. I will trust that growth will catch me on the way down, that confidence will meet me on the way forward, that readiness will rise as I do." This is how legends are made. Not by knowing more, not by waiting longer, but by choosing faster, by acting before they feel ready. The edge of growth. When you move before you feel ready, you break the cycle that keeps most people small. That cycle is built on the belief that success depends on ideal circumstances, ideal timing, and ideal resources. But let me tell you plainly, nothing ideal ever arrives. The world isn't interested in handing you the perfect moment. It's waiting for you to command the moment. And that command is given the moment you act, not when you know all the answers, not when your fears vanish, but when your decision outweighs your doubt. You must start thinking in a new way. If I feel unprepared, good. That means I'm on the edge of growth. Because the edge is where winners are made. It's where old identities die and new ones are forged. The person who stays in the comfortable middle never discovers who they truly are. They might survive, but they never truly excel. Winners live on the edge of their ability, and they reach further, not because they feel fully equipped, but because they know that readiness is built through action. Understand this. You have to build the muscle of motion, and the only way to do that is by moving before certainty appears. Certainty, like confidence, is created. It's not something you wait for. It's something you pull out of yourself through repetition, resilience, and strong intent. But the person who waits to feel certain is forever stuck at the start line. Their potential becomes a prison, locked behind the bars of indecision. I want to speak directly to the version of you that still thinks they're being wise by waiting. You tell yourself, I need more clarity, or I'm just not quite ready. Let me tell you something. Clarity doesn't come from sitting. It comes from stepping. It comes from facing the unknown, from learning as you go, not from sitting and analyzing. There are lessons you will never discover until you walk into them. And those lessons are the very tools you need to succeed. The person who walks finds answers. The person who sits finds excuses. There's a reason so many brilliant people are stuck in mediocrity. It's not because they're unqualified. It's because they keep trying to perfect a path that can only be built by moving. They've created an image of success in their mind, but they never become the person in that vision because they're too afraid to meet the version of themselves that lives beyond hesitation. And here's the painful irony. The very act of waiting erodes your belief in yourself. Every time you delay, your inner confidence shrinks just a little more. But every time you move, even in fear, that confidence grows. It might feel like a whisper at first, but repeated whispers become roars, and those roars will one day drown out the doubt that used to paralyze you. Your courage creates your clarity. Let me give you something practical. You don't have to take a massive leap. You just have to move. You just have to make the first call, write the first page, say yes to the opportunity, and take one step in the direction of your goal. That one step sends a ripple through your entire life. It signals to your mind that you're no longer just thinking. You are now becoming. When you begin, resources align. When you show up, the right people show up. When you walk, the path becomes clear, not all at once, but just enough for your next step. This is the truth. Your courage creates your clarity. You won't get clarity before you start. You'll get it through doing it. It's not the perfectly finished person who wins. It's the person who goes through the finishing process. And that process only begins when you act. Stop waiting for life to get easier. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the fear to go away. Instead, become the person who responds not to feelings, but to principle, not to comfort, but to your calling. There's a version of you inside who has been watching and waiting. He knows who you're capable of becoming. He knows the strength hidden under hesitation. He knows the vision you've been carrying, even if you've never said it out loud. And he is waiting for you to take the first step. That version of you doesn't care what other people think. He doesn't measure his worth by applause. He doesn't delay action because of fear. He decides, he commits, he acts. That version of you isn't make-believe. He's waiting for your permission to emerge. And the only thing that unlocks him is action taken before readiness is felt. That's the line you must now cross. Not someday. Not when it's easier, but now. There's no greatness without risk. There's no transformation without discomfort. There's no lasting impact without motion. So, take the risk, bear the discomfort, start the motion. And know this. When you do, something inside you will awaken. You will walk differently, think differently, and speak differently. Because you're no longer trying to feel like a winner, you are becoming one. And becoming isn't a feeling, it's a discipline, a mindset, a pattern of behavior repeated, so consistently it becomes your new identity. The power of consistent action. Once you shift from the person who waits to the person who moves, you'll notice something else. People will start responding differently. Not because you sought their approval, but because motion is magnetic, commitment is contagious, clarity attracts clarity, and your boldness permits others to step out of their hesitation. You're not just building for yourself. You're becoming a model for what is possible, a living example of what it looks like to stop waiting and start walking. That is the power of action. It multiplies. It spills into every area of your life. Your relationships, your influence, your income, your confidence. One decision made with belief creates 1,000 ripple effects. But that ripple only begins when you take the first step. So, if you've been waiting, consider this your wake-up call. Consider this your moment. Consider this your turning point. The gap between who you are and who you could be isn't closed by time. It is closed by action. Action taken now, not tomorrow, not when you're ready, but now. This is how winners rise. Not because they knew it all, not because they had certainty, but because they dared to begin. If you're still with me, then you've already started to shift. You've already started to question the old idea that action must wait until conditions are perfect. You've already begun to believe, at some level, that maybe readiness isn't something you wait for. It's something you create. And if that thought has taken root, even just a little, then you are now more powerful than most. Because most people never reach that realization. They spend their entire lives trying to avoid uncertainty, never realizing that uncertainty is the very ground where transformation grows. Let me give you a truth that has stood the test of time. The greatest success stories were built in uncomfortable situations. No one ever built a lasting legacy from a place of comfort. No one ever created change, launched movements, built companies, shifted cultures, or left a big impact from a position of absolute certainty. What they had was conviction. And conviction doesn't need comfort. It doesn't even need perfect clarity. It needs a decision, a moment when you say, I will no longer sit in the shadows of my potential. I will no longer play the role of the hesitant person while the world waits for my gifts to be activated. You have something inside you, something powerful, gifts, ideas, principles, insights, and strengths that the world has yet to fully experience. And if you keep waiting, not only do you deny yourself a life you could have lived, you deny the world the contribution you were born to make. Let that sink in. You're not just waiting to feel ready. You're holding back your gift. And the world cannot afford for you to keep sitting still. Because your voice, your vision, your value, it matters. But it only matters if you give it motion. There's something sacred about a person who acts when fear is loud, when the path is unclear, when support is scarce. Because that kind of person doesn't move for applause. They move for alignment. They don't show up to impress. They show up to impact. And they don't make decisions based on comfort. They make decisions based on character. That person is the winner, not because they never fail, not because they never doubt, but because they keep moving anyway. There's a myth that says you need to have everything figured out before you start. You don't. What you need is a reason. And once your reason becomes strong enough, your movement will match it. The problem isn't that people lack time or knowledge or ability. It's that they lack fire. They've let the spark die while they waited for perfect conditions. But winners keep the spark alive by moving, even when it's small, even when it's messy, even when no one sees it. Because the fire you feed grows, and the fire you neglect dies. It's that simple. So if your passion feels low, act. If your belief feels shaky, act. If your purpose feels buried, act. Not because you feel ready, but because action builds readiness. Action builds belief. Action awakens your inner leadership. And action develops the one thing that separates beginners from achievers: identity. Identity isn't just declared. It's shown through your actions. It's built in the gym when no one's watching. It's built in the late nights, the early mornings, the lonely times when you keep going even though you could quit. Every time you act, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. Every time you hesitate, you cast a vote for the person you used to be. Which one are you voting for today? The world is full of good intentions, but only a few live with execution integrity. That means they do what they said they do. They follow through. They build. They finish. They show up, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is clapping. That's what makes someone unstoppable. Not hype, not noise, not perfection, but consistent, aligned, courageous action done before the feeling of readiness ever arrives. Winners don't wait to feel like leaders. They lead and become leaders. They don't wait to feel confident. They take action and become confident. They don't wait until all the questions are answered. They move with the ones they do have and trust that the rest will be revealed along the way. Let me leave you with a thought. 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, who do you want to be? What do you want to have built? What do you want to look back on and say, I'm proud of that? Whatever the answer is, I guarantee you this. It will not come through waiting. It will not come through more research, more study, safer thinking. It will only come through bold action. And the funny thing is, when you look back on the things you feared, you'll laugh. You'll realize they were never as big as they seemed. You'll realize that fear was only loud because you were listening. But once you acted, once you walked, once you decided, the fear lost its grip and you gained something it could never give you: ownership of your destiny. You don't need someone to approve of you. You don't need another sign. You don't need a bigger audience or a clearer plan or more motivation. What you need is a single decision that, from this moment forward, you will be the person who acts before he feels ready. Because readiness isn't a feeling, it's a reputation. It's the reputation you build with yourself every time you do what you said you'd do. And when that reputation becomes rock solid, when your word means something to you, when your actions align with your purpose, no force on earth can stop you. This is the way. Decide with conviction, move with intention, act without apology, and become the kind of person who doesn't wait for the world to crown him because he already knows who he is, and he's too busy building to look around for validation. Winners act before they feel ready. That's why they win. What specific action are you feeling called to take, even if you don't feel entirely ready for it yet?